Hi, and welcome to Deep Dialogues, 12 extraordinary conversations I'm having with amazing female soul stewards who at this time are transmitting their unconditional love, empathy, and compassion about the creation of a new level of living, and therefore helping us to form ideas about a brave new world that we can create together. Have a wonderful time listening in. We're live. We're live. while Ryan just shifts the screens around. Hello, Sabine. Hello, Lisa. These two wonderful ladies have been tuning in, I think, every single week for the last 10 weeks. And Stephen, welcome. We've never actually. And Sophie, oh, how wonderful. There are some glorious people here who I know will be so enchanted by you, Ma Hulili, that they'll be tuning into your website. So we can make a start. I think we're live, and then we'll have a party, and everybody will join in with us, and we'll see lots of questions coming up. So formally, I would just like to welcome this wonderful lady that we have with us this evening, as well as welcoming all of you. And I just want to share with you her bio. Ma Hulili is a wisdom carrier and elder, expressing her magic as a mystic, shaman, writer, and singing master of conscious sound. She has appeared professionally through many TV shows such as Oprah, Good Morning America, and Regis, and she sung for many heads of state at the United Nations, for Pope John Paul, and also for the Nobel Peace Prize concert in Oslo. Her music has been heralded by many people, such as Gloria Steinem, Alice Walker, and Deepak Chopra. And Alice said, I was very touched by Ma Hulili's music. It is deeply moving, powerful, and beautiful. You, Ma Hulili, have created songs that will continue to feed my soul forever. Thank you. Gloria Steinem said, Ma Hulili's singing is among my all-time favorites. It soothes, it uplifts, and her stunning vocals and toning create a simple and spontaneous combustion that is beyond words, beyond genre, and beyond wonderful. I mean, you could just go on and on and on, which is absolutely fantastic. But if I may, I'd like to cut to the chase and just come straight into our sharing, because you are such a precious jewel that I want everybody to receive the wonders that pours forth from you, both energetically and also vocally. So welcome, my darling, welcome. And please, could you tell us, where does Ma Hulili arrive from in the sense of the name, means, and who gave it to you?
It's a name that was given to me in a dream about 3 years ago now. And it came in kind of parts and pieces, and then my team said that I should start to sing it to myself, so that I got it in the order and internalized it and understood the frequency of it. And Leilani is the last part of it. The full name is Mahiet, Ma Hulili, Leilani. And it was suggested that I use Ma Hulili for this type of thing.
Yes.
But I knew that Leilani was a Hawaiian word. It means crown of light. And so I wondered if perhaps Mahiet might be a Hawaiian word, and it wasn't. And I knew that Ma must be about the frequency of the divine feminine. But when I looked up Hulili, I discovered it was a Hawaiian word. And the delightful thing about it is the name means frequency or sound, which will, of course, beyond coincidence. But it also means bright light, like light that sparkles on the water, or the twinkle of starlight. And when I was young, my father was an alcoholic, and it was sometimes quite scary in my home, or difficult. And into my dreams would come a woman who would sing to me and soothe me. And she said she was my star mother. And she called me her little Lili, which she said meant her little twinkle or spark.
Mm.
It was
Mm.
her little spark. And so she called me Lili. And so I loved that Hulili meant spark and twinkle,
Mm.
as
Mm.
well as referring to frequency
Mm.
and
Mm.
vibration. So it
And
was
of course,
perfect.
the syllable who, Hu, who, as in human, is
Yeah,
a very sacred syllable in most of the world root languages, isn't
that's
it?
true.
You know,
Yes.
and it is always an association with the manifestation of force becoming sound.
Oh, I've forgotten that.
Yeah,
But wonderful that
yeah.
you've reminded me. And the name Mayat, when it came to me, I thought it was part of Ma, and I thought it was Ma Hat Ma. So I thought, oh no, the name can't be Mahatma. I don't want a name that's Mahatma. That would never suit me. No, no. And after sort of bouncing all around for a while, my team interrupted and explained that I was, using English to understand something, and that it was more Mahet as a word of its own.
Mm.
And then Ma'at came in, explaining that this was one of the early and original versions of Ma'at.
Mm.
And it was the spirit of Ma'at that I was in communication with, who was not actually a person. And so it's sort of a composite. And some wonderful information, there's not time for now, was given about why that. But a very short part of that is that it speaks to part of my sound heritage that comes out of Egypt. And then Ma speaks to where the word Ma is used in a title or something in India, speaks to my heritage there. And then my heritage in Hawaii is ancient and long. And so that's what's behind the name.
Wow. And so there's a bridge between Lemuria and Atlantis right there. Lemuria being your Hawaiian ancestral lineage on spirit levels. By the way, welcome everybody, and it's wonderful that you're here. I'm speaking with Ma Hulili Leilani, who is, as you can feel, absolutely precious to us this evening. So well done for coming. Thank you so much. Yes, I just wanted to expand on the nature of Ma'at, and how she was the goddess of truth, who would take our hearts and weigh them on the great scales with the weight of a feather.
Yes.
Brought in by Thoth or Tehuti.
Yes, yes.
And while this happened, they sang.
What? They sang?
They sang. They sang the song of the soul. Yeah.
Yes.
So it just, while you were sharing, it just all configures in my consciousness.
Yes, absolutely. That's a wonderful addition.
I've been, being in Egypt over the last 50 years. I first went 50 years ago. I think it's 50 years. Maybe it's a little bit more. And no, it's 51 years ago. That's right. And I was taken into the halls of learning on a psychic level, whether it be in daydream or in night dream. I was taken in meditation or in sleep state, and shown extraordinary things where Thoth claimed me and said, this is what you're going to be doing with sound. So he was very instrumental in introducing me 33 years ago to the angels of Atlantis, which is interesting, talking about Matthias, because I haven't met anybody who has the articulation of Atlantis in the way that he has. And he was talking about the 12 archangels. He refers to them as the Elohim. It's interesting.
Yes.
And although he and I have met, he was in a slightly non-present dazed state, so we didn't really encounter one another. Anyway, but back to what you were sharing with us. So the sacred song came in right at the very beginning. I would love to think that as you were interpreting Ma Hulili Leilani, that they were actually singing to you.
Yes. The name came like as a song, and it was Mayet Ma Hulili sort of a little round that repeated, and it was very dear, but really full.
Yes.
Of many voices. Yeah.
Wow. When did you discover the power of sound, or indeed, when did you discover your song?
The first experience that I had of sound was when I was between 9 and 11, I would say. I was at the store with my mother, and it was a general store where Ma Hulili would take your order, and then she would go get your items. So you would speak your order to her. And the woman in front of us sang her order. And afterward, I said to my mother, why did that woman in front sing her order? And Mom said, nobody sang their order. What are you talking about? Nobody sang their order. And I said, that woman in front of us, she sang her order. She did not sing her order. And I said, yeah, she was that woman who had her hair up in the funny thing that looked like this. And she said, oh, that was Mrs. Kilcher. And she's Swiss, and so she speaks English with a foreign language. And I thought, that means every language has its own song. Because hearing my language in an accent made me understand the accent was because of their song. And so I went to the library and I asked for records of people who were either singing or speaking in different languages so that I could hear the song of different languages. And there wasn't much in my little town's library, but I heard some opera and a language speaking course or two. And I was able to hear that when French people speak English, English sounds different. And when German people speak English, it sounds different. And so I felt like I was hearing the song behind the languages, which I still think I was. And I think that each person then has the song of their own language in the cadence of how they're speaking. And as you well know, that can be developed and played with in really fun and interesting ways. And how your voice sounds in the first place with a cultural difference. So in your voice, I hear the sound of authority. The British language often carries that. But you've softened the frequency of authority and yet use it so wonderfully for the certainty that each of us might want in our voice to carry who we are. And I really, in your tone, hear playfulness, but not at all in any kind of a corny or usual type of way. But there's a lot of playfulness in your tone, and flair. You have flair in your tone, and these are things that are really wonderful for doing what you do, for communicating. And you also have boldness. And when I was reading your book, Diana, The Voice of Change, there was a place in it, I made a note here so I could share it, where she mentions boldness. And I thought that it was something good to introduce because it's something so important in my own life, and I think in the life of you as well as those who are listening. And it's where in the book, Diana was speaking, you were quoting her, speaking about how intimidating and daunting and difficult it was, all the projections that were, coming at her, and the feeling that people were sort of nibbling her alive, my phrase, but wanted parts of her. And she said, at first, this was so alarming until I began to meet the crowds with a boldness that equally met their force. And she mentioned that even that doing that then was itself kind of slightly frightening, I think was what she said, but until she got used to it. And I think some boldness, which usually precedes us somehow in frequency, including tone in the voice. But if your parents are being unreasonable and unkind, or your partner or something, or you're having difficulty at work, it's often boldness that is the thing to meet it with, and learning what that frequency is and how to use it, I think is very much part of your mastery.
Bless you, that's beautiful. Is it something I refer to as being sovereignty?
Yes, yes.
And I use the term sovereign, meaning there's a balance between the king and the queen. So the king is extrovert. That's the bold part. But the queen also has this delicacy of heart-centered communication. So with these two elements, I suppose, it's very much to do with the essence and the wisdom of the yang and the yin energy, isn't it? From an archetypal point of view, bringing those together. And this was something that I was really working with Diana through, and accessing it from the archetypal process, meaning that the archetypes are our keys into our consciousness. And it seemed to me that she was of the lover archetype. So she was very much the Aphrodite, Venus, or Hathor, the goddess of love. And one of the things that was difficult was the sensitivity of her frequency often meant that she was not able to frame that energy, energetically speaking. And so she succumbed to the prey of the negativity, or the prey of the criticism. And it affected her field in such a way. So I was working on allowing her to feel weight in her voice and allowing her to feel a boldness, so that again she could bring in Pallas Athena, she could bring in the goddess of wisdom, because she was extraordinarily wise in the wisdom that you and I favor, meaning that she had the ability to read people and read situations like that. And she was always, always right. She was very accurate in her perceptions, very, very accurate. And I feel that that's a really useful. Good evening to everybody. It's wonderful to see you. This, as you know, is Ma Hulili Leilani, and we're having this wonderful conversation about sound. However, to go on from there, rather than me telling stories, when did you discover your ability to fly through song?
My former husband and I were a successful duo in the state that we were in. But when we divorced, I had other choices about groups to join and so on. But right at that point, I had an experience of sound, because I had collected many types of chant from around the world. And it suddenly occurred to me that I was working as an artist, a visual artist at the time, and that I might, if I heard them all at once, maybe hear the combined sound of humanity or something like that, sort of an artistic idea. And so I took 7 cassettes and gathered from my studio and workshop and gallery different cassette players, and put 7 in a circle and went around, turned them all on, and stood in the middle. And something completely unexpected happened, though I was, as an artist, of course, hoping for the unexpected. Because that's what artists are all about. And I began to have an experience of sound, instead of being able to think, now this is like the Song of Humanity or something. Instead, I seemed to begin to dissolve. And to the point where there was a moment when my mind was going, are we going to flicker out? Is this right? I had a moment of panic. And then I think I would say now that this was 1984 or so, that I probably was experiencing light and color, experiencing myself as light and color frequencies of sound. And then slowly I began to come back into my physical makeup. And I understood in the beginning what's the word, and the word was sound, at a different level of understanding how what it is that creates life, you know, my own composition and decomposition that had occurred, and much more. And I became utterly fascinated by the effect of the human voice on the human being, which of course is what chanting and toning is all about. And so I was no longer interested in accepting any of those other kinds of more normal opportunities, and began every morning just to be toning and singing, not toning and singing yet, but first through, well, like initially through children's songs, as opposed to some song I had learned just how to sing. So I would just sing, Mary had a little lamb, and starting to play ultimately with the syllables, each syllable of the word, with the breaks where they occurred in the syllables, to experience and feel the syllables, but also the body as a toning mechanism was just extraordinary. You know, how you can sound off of the sinuses and in the throat, you can gather a sound in the back of your throat and bounce it off the cartilage in your nose, you know, for one type of thing, how you can tighten the muscles right at the base of the throat before you bring it into this big cave that your mouth is. The spaces in our body, in our lungs, around our heart, the heart sac is an extraordinary place to vibrate sound. And so working with the body, I began to learn things like our body is made up of millions, beyond millions of little tiny gyroscopes. And that those at the atomic or nuclear level are what generate light in us. And sound really affects those little generators in positive, well, and negative ways. And so many things. A being came to me and showed me the Walls of Jericho story. And how before that, what this great sound master that he was did was walk around and around the walls of the city several times, toning into the little areas where there were weaknesses and cracks. And then from the hill, when the trumpets were sounded, that particular sound went in and brought the walls down. Yes. And so over these years of that, I just learned or remembered so much about sound, including my own period of sound mastery, or earliest period of sound mastery in Moria, when the waters were starting to rise. When I, for the first time, heard my own unique sound, because we were much more of one, though we were individual, we were much more of one than we would think of individual now. But in the changing, the rising of the waters, what we understood was the great wheel of time was turning a new round, and it was going to be a new time. And this time was going to be the time of the individual. And our sages, if they were, we didn't call them that, but our prophets and wise people spoke of this. And so, you know, like now when we think the times are changing, right? Energetically. And we talk about this a great deal. And so we did then as well. And we were excited and interested and curious. And as a sound person, what I had understood from what was being said was that we were going to be another kind of unthinkable kind of individualness that was hard to conceive of. And so I thought, what would it be like to hear only my sound? Because I was aware of the sound of the group and worked with the sound of the group, and we didn't address it as individually as we do now. It was all how it all affects everything. And that's information we're coming into now, isn't it? How it all everything. We're coming from the point of how it affects us
Mm.
to how it affects everything.
Mm.
But at that time, I stood in this little, our temples were natural places, and this was a natural sort of small, shallow bowl that we had enhanced with sort of rippling structures. It wasn't as tall as, it was a little taller than me, but not much.
And your height is?
Pardon?
Your height is? Because we don't see you. We see you.
Then I was shorter, but I'm 5'5".
Mm.
And so it was just kind of a depression that was kind of round and worked a certain way with sound. And I had this idea that if I would stand in it and listen, that I might hear what was only me, which was a really remarkable idea. And as I would go there and do this listening, I had an experience where I heard what was not all and was not others, but was only me. And it was, of course, a life-changing and an extraordinary thing. And now, I think you would agree, we don't even hear us, do we? You know, we don't, we know that we might have we know we're unique, but we don't understand those, like one of my depths of interest and understanding is about the inaudible sound. So we don't like our group song, for instance, would be in inaudible frequencies and they would be felt, not so much heard, though occasionally that happens, to be heard by the ear. But to have an experience of one's own frequency is still as earth-shaking as it was then. And then to hear the sound of all is as well. And to hear the sound of one's group, to know the frequency of one's group and other things like that is quite...
What do you feel has disturbed our knowing of that inaudible sound that then becomes audible, and we know our melody, we know our symphony, we know our note, we know our song? What has disturbed it?
Well, probably at the most basic level, I think I would say that we took this adventure into individuality to a place no one could have imagined then. And to the place where truly, especially those of us, who are very westernized, no longer have any of those other capacities that come from connection to what I would call the rest of me, Yes. That in one of my blogs, I wrote about we're like the tip of the iceberg, and most of us understand that. And that there's this small percentage, some people say 10 and some say 20, that is above the water. And that's what we know, see, hear, feel. But the rest of us is in the great ocean of being. And so connecting to that is what all of us now have considerable interest in. What we're all about, we're all going about that in our various ways.
I had just had a vision of you and I working this in Hawaii.
This morning, as I was sitting with our time to come, I suddenly thought, oh, he and I are going to do something quite fun and wonderful together.
I just have a vision, because I'm fascinated by water, and here you are talking of the water, and of course we know that the water isn't just the water of life, and isn't just associated with our emotional body, earth, water, air, fire, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, but is actually, we're beginning to understand that there is a power in water to refract the sonar of sound. We know this, of course, because when we're babies and we go under the bath water and it suddenly becomes this huge sonic landscape. Or there we are underneath the waves of the ocean and we can hear something similar, particularly if we're snorkeling, because there's a distortion of sound, isn't there, when we're snorkeling, purely because our vision is changed with the mask. But I feel that there's another illuminating point, which is that we're slowly waking up to the fact that feeling is the language of the soul, and that the water molecule is the energy transmitter for pure feeling. And that's what Mr. Emoto, Masaru Emoto in Miracles in Water, he was so tuned into. So there's something around the whole substance of those trajectories or those routing points that I think is very, very, very significant.
I agree. I wrote a blog about a little bit along this line about water, and I'll search it back and send it to you later. I think you'll enjoy it. And we're such watery beings.
Yes.
Cells are filled with water.
98% water.
And sound and space, and sound and water. You know, they're
Yes.
And sound and light. Those are all very profound esoteric connections. Yeah.
And the substance of the fact that we're a water planet is very significant. The angels teach me that this was once a water planet and held together by 4 moons. And then millennia ago, the Confederation decided to take much of the water, to dispel 3 moons. And much of the water was actually taken to Mars, which is why Mars is a frozen planet and has always been seen esoterically as brother-sister image of planet Earth. What's interesting is that Mars has become the warring element within our beings. There's a whole distortion there. And it seems to me that a dissonance was introduced. And that dissonance is something that we understand today as being noise. We're dismayed by the noise, whether it's the noise of the machines or the noise here. Shall I, shan't I, will I, won't I, all of that stuff to do with doubt. Therefore, we move away from our sovereignty, or we move away from our song, we move away from our melody. Yeah. Sorry, darling?
And all of our unconscious sound, as well as the machines and things, the way we're constantly in meaningless dialogues with one another.
Yes.
Which I don't really criticize in their entirety at all, but the sort of in a filled auditorium, the noise of human beings talking is quite dissonant.
Yes, what I call the wittering of worrying.
Yes.
And I remember 45 years ago, whenever it was, when I first visited Sai Baba, I was called to Sai Baba, this great avatar who's known as the Cosmic Christ. And he said to me, Thinking, worry, too much worry. What's the point of worrying when you can breathe?
So perfect.
And that was one of the great lessons that I learned, because I was born of worriers, i.e. the wittering of worry. You know, one has great compassion for those who do worry, but let's cease it, because we automatically give our power away. So we're giving our song away, aren't we? We're giving our symphony away.
Yes.
This is a great stirring between us. I can feel the quickening.
Yes, were there not time, and would we not have concern for boring people with what they didn't come for, we might really charge off into that.
Yeah. Anyway, so we're really touching into the palpability of sound on one level, and how it's an amazing energy, dare I say, tool that we can use. But it's also a sacred frequency, and that as a sacred frequency, it also becomes not a tool, but a key into further dimensions.
Yes, absolutely.
I feel that that's one of the reasons why the angels and many elemental beings, and now more and more ETs, are coming to visit us, and they come in the form of an orb, because the orb is a geometric form that holds light and sound. 2 weekends ago, I was at Avebury Henge, which is one of the most sacred standing stone circles in Europe, indeed in the world. It's where the majority of the great crop circles take place. It's a very large earthworks. I'll send you a link so you can see it online. And I haven't been since last year, and I was standing post-COVID, standing with my back against these huge Saracen stones that come, I mean, they're vast, these Neolithic stones that come from hundreds of miles away. They're known as the blue stones. They come from mountains in Wales, Preseli Mountains. Anyway, and I was leaning against this stone and it was singing.
Yes, I've heard stones sing.
Yeah.
Yeah, what you mean.
And then I said, well, what is the song that you are singing? And I was shown images of post-COVID, what was happening on a soul level for each of us. And how great channels or temples, more like sentinels of light, were being opened in the landscape of sacred spaces, so that dear departing ones, those souls, those humans who had departed into soul, who were returning home, were also encouraging a huge force of exchange from heavenly wisdom coming down onto earth. And that most of it was being communicated through light and sound. So the stones have all of this information.
I've had an understanding, in the recent couple of months, of what you're saying too, in a different way, from a different source. And I would guess that many of the listeners are beginning to understand and sense this also about one of the great silver linings that are in this. Yeah.
Yes. So in order to activate the fullness of this within our beings, because we know that making sound is a physiological process that then has all of these extraordinary other dimensional, other realm energies attached to them, what would you recognize and what would you recommend as a practice?
First, I'll say that my practice is first to create coherency. There's a song that was given to me in the mid-'80s that I was told if I would sing each morning, it would create coherency that would last about 24 hours. And that if I did that, it would change my life. And it did, and continues to. It helps us maintain coherency, especially now when we're in very incoherent time of cross frequencies. And by the way, that song is on my website with the words trailing for if people want to see that song there. And lots of people sing it with me in the morning.
Yeah. Where exactly on your website is it?
It's on the front page right now. And my website is a work in progress. I haven't had one for most of 12 years because I've been on a walkabout and didn't use technology. But only in the last 6 weeks have I been creating one. So you'll find duplicated things and odd things that you might not expect there. And I think Daybreak Song is on the first page right now, at least
Daybreak
2 times.
Yes.
We're getting ready to put something else in one of the places. So it's there.
Right.
But then the second thing that I do is I just tone and sing, because as I said, that early thing of sound caused a fascination on the effect of the human voice on the human being, and especially the effect of our voice on our own physicality and person. So I find it one of the very best ways to understand myself more, to be with like a deep grief or a confusion that I'm having. And so I use it as a practice. And then it's also one of my best ways just to sing. It doesn't matter. When I was in the Amazon, the group of women I was with in my second time in Ecuador, we all sang the Daybreak Song. And And so we learned it in all these splendid harmonies and wonderful things. And we sang it to the Eshwar women who were meeting Western women like us for the first time. And they loved our song. And then we said, why don't you sing us a song? And, oh, great, as embarrassment ensued. And the chief then sort of got up and started saying, sing a song. And for some reason, it caused such a problem. And so we started saying, no, that's okay. But by then the chief was insisting. And so finally a woman stepped forward and said, all right, I'll sing a song. And this is what she sang. And the translator said that what she said was, I'm hoeing my yams and the sun is coming up and I love the sun coming up, shining on my yams, and my yams are going to grow and feed my family. And it turned out they don't have any organized songs.
Right.
They have only their singing that they do spontaneously and all the time. They sing and sing, but it's all what they make up in the moment.
Amazing.
And so that's what I would say to people is sing and just make up, about your health. If you have a heart problem, then sing, oh, I love my heart, whatever you feel like singing, or leave words behind like I began to, and just start to let melody and nonsensical syllabic soundings come, and your body understands songs so well, and all those little gyroscopes start to gyroscopes are like a top, and you get it right speed and it stays like this, but if its speed starts to go off, starts to tip or stop, and that causes, I think, disease. And so if all the little gyroscopes in the cells of the liver have toppled over, there will be liver dysfunction, right? And singing is what spins the top, really responds to sound. So I do use sound as a simple practice.
The keys are flow. It's the breath the breath in the sound, because it's sustained pitch. It provides flow. So we come back into the flow of nature, which dissonance, disturbance, dis-ease takes us away from. I mean, this is what I discovered inherently as a child, because I remember the first sound that I heard, I must have been in the crib. I saw a bright white light and I heard what I now call a humming sound, but it was this continuous and I flowed with it because I saw it as light. So I just sat on the sound and flowed as though it was water. But it was the breath and the tone together from my mother.
Interesting.
And that when life became a problem, it became a problem because of the dissonance of that, which was to do with people's anger of me, because they didn't understand what I was talking about, or I couldn't achieve the earthborn tasks such as reading skills and early computation, math stuff. And their energy was always jagged, and that traumatized me completely. So flow and fun.
Flow and fun, yes.
Whereas it was very interesting that there you were presenting. I didn't quite grasp the name of the tribe.
Oh, it was the Ashwar.
The Ashwar. Wow.
Ashwar tribe deep in the rainforest in Ecuador.
So they felt initially they felt that you were imposing, well, not imposing, but that they didn't have a formal way of being able to respond. But as soon as the woman stepped forward and sang her song about the yams, the informality, the fun, allowed all of the masking to be released. It's so beautiful.
What it was, as we talked with them to understand what had just happened through a translator, of course, and what we understood was they had never heard a song like that. So imagine if you've for the first time hear a Gregorian chant. I mean,
Mm.
these were ladies, we all loved singing, and we had like who knows how many harmonies going and stuff, you know. And we worked out where the breath would be, and we had so much fun with it. And then when we did it, it was really quite a thing.
Mm.
And they were completely, they didn't know how they could, they had nothing like that to, that's what they thought we were asking them to do.
Mm. Mm.
And they had, they felt sort of, I don't know if intimidated would be the right word, but probably kind of intimidated. And, you know, they had no grandness.
Yes.
Like that.
Yes.
And so they were quite shy about sharing as, you know, as any of us, anyone listening, anyone here today, if somebody asked us to do what she had done, we would think that's very poor effort, and we would be kind of embarrassed about it.
Yeah.
So they were shy about sharing such an unpolished, obviously, sort of effort, and thought this was not at all what we were asking them to do. But then they saw how delighted we were, and how,
Yes.
you know, like I told them, oh my gosh, you've reminded me what it is to sing again. You know, this is just, singing is just a blessing, you know, and singing to plants, singing to my plants in my house or yard, they just love it. Oh my, they're so there. And we know, we've seen the videos on YouTube of how responsive they are. And our body.
So there we are, everybody. Are you hearing this? You know, don't worry about, am I doing the right thing? Is my tone flat? Just sing, 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 sing.
And Spirit doesn't care if we're
absolutely, absolutely.
And told me to sing in circumstances where like everybody else had in-ears but me. And you probably know what happens if you're singing with an orchestra and everybody else has in-ears and you don't. You're going to sound like that guy with headphones on at the top of his voice singing completely off key on the pavement. And Spirit says, it's not about you doing well, honey. It's about, we're all coming in this, and what's going out together is your divine song, which isn't necessarily whatever the melody the voice has made up or the mind has made
I have a wonderful story to illuminate the conviction of what you're sharing. This was years and years and years ago when I first started deciding that I'd been invited to write a book about the sound, about voice. And I called it The Sacred and Secular Purpose of the Human Voice, you know, which is not a selling title, but that was my working title. However, it led me into some very interesting areas. And the point of the story is that I heard of an extraordinary gospel singer down in Atlanta, Georgia. It was an African-American lady singing in a 120 voice choir, and that she had a 5-octave range, and that she could sing any style whatsoever, but she was completely untaught. Her ear led her.
Like a bird.
And like a bird. And the point where this was all addressed by an opera singer at the Met in New York City, which for those of you who don't know is a great opera house in New York City. And she said, go and interview her. So it was arranged for me to go and interview this lady. And I listened to her sing, and she sang with her heart and soul out there, leading this huge choir. And her pyrotechnics, her dynamics vocally were just extraordinary. But she sang indefatigably. She did something that no opera singer could do. You know how opera singers tend to be very, understandably, very precious about their voices, because so that they can actually sing the pyrotechnic display of what opera demands, and it's immensely demanding musically and so forth. However, it's a totally different way of appreciating sound, isn't it? And then I interviewed her afterwards, and I said, "How did you do that?" And she said, what do you mean, how did I do that? But how did you sing so indefatigably? And you sang for hours with your heart in front of you and your soul just before you. How did you do this? And she looked at me completely dismayed and then said, "Honey, God don't mind a bum note." And because there wasn't a bad note, there wasn't a bum note in anything that she sang, but it was her level of permissibility that, you know, there are so many residues or so many resonances that are in association with that, that if we can release the shame, if we can release the nervousness, if we can release, oh, but that's wrong, which has often been constructed by music teachers at school. I always remember I fortunately had perfect pitch, so I could sing, but I know a number of people who were told to go and sit at the back and just mouth it in song class, you know, or whatever. Anyway, so our voices, whether they're sustained speech or sustained toning, as we're saying through song or through chant, can actually be immensely powerful keys to open up the totality of what it is to be human, rather than to close down our humanity.
And you say something in that, I love the book, Diana.
Bless you.
Bless you. It is, it's certainly by no means just a book about Diana. You know, it's really about the reader. It's just so beautifully written, and the things that that I gained from it and that are there for everyone, I think are just quite brilliant. And one of the things you say is words anchor states, giving sound purpose, and therefore discovering the field of resonance that surrounds a word is to find its treasure as well as its true sense of purpose. Sound is a dimension of the world's meaning. You have a wonderful way of putting things and of writing and of saying things.
It's so beautiful to hear you say that, you know, to read those words, because that's what I feel when I'm writing them. Yes. It's very interesting because a number of people have said to me, have been quite critical about the book, and a number of them have said, "What do you mean when you say that words anchor states?" And I said, "Well, it's pretty obvious, isn't it?" But, you know, it's interesting that from a left brain perspective, it's actually difficult to conceive of. But as soon as we move into the space of the heart and the realm of spirit, that it suddenly makes sense. Yes.
And people, you know, think our thoughts, you know, no, we create the world with our thoughts. So I had an interesting conversation with a friend recently about something that another writer said. I tone so much to what a person feels like that I often don't remember their names, who said, I don't think that we manifest with our thoughts. We manifest who we are.
Yes.
We shouldn't become afraid of our thoughts. Oh no, my thoughts are going to ruin my life. You know, I'm having all this erratic thought. I'm ruining my life right now. But words are not only so important because we're touching someone so intimately. Our sound is going in and tickling like we licked their ear. I mean, it's a very intimate thing, speaking, and we could really have a lot more fun with it. When I talked about the use of words and the use of our voice, one woman said to me, "Oh no, it's just another thing to think of." But that's sort of like, no, it's another thing to play with. Once you start to notice, oh, I'm talking, what am I saying? You know, and once you start to hear yourself, and you can begin to play with, I have a voice, you know, even just with your children or your partner or at work, I have a voice and I'm using it all the time, and I could have some fun using it. And it's also like, you know, how people dress for success. Speak for success to me has a different meaning, and should be taught. I've sort of half written a blog about that, because to speak for success, you know, about how we put ourselves in the world, it doesn't mean you have to have any level of brilliance, just playful attention to the fact that you have a voice and you get to say something, and you are all the time anyway.
This is so beautiful to hear. Gosh, it's the resonances are so deep, it's triggering all sorts of satellite
I can
feeling
feel that.
experiences and so forth.
Like
And unfortunately, our time is marching on like mad. And if I may, I would just like to refer to some of the questions that people are asking in the chat box. That was an extraordinary sound, wasn't it? Pat says, delightful conversation. Thank you, Pat. Lisa asked a question. How would you find the confidence to sing at home with a constantly full household?
I understand. Yeah. Yeah, it's about, I think that we're so used to being criticized and to imagining criticism and that's because we have come to feel that we're what's in the petri dish, not the scientist looking at it. So we feel so scrutinized and looked at. But that means we have always like the outer watchers for any mistake, peering at our little petri dish, our little bacteria that we are in our petri dish. And instead, it's not to become confident, it's to continue the work we're always doing of caring less about how we sound. So when I sang for the Pope, they changed the number at the last, and I was going to sing a cappella, and I had no in-ears, and it was with an orchestra. And I knew what that was going to be like. And if there's a recording of it out there, I'm singing very off. And I'm sure that there were other extraordinary singers and people on the program. And so I sang so badly. But because I learned, I'm not here to be like that wonderful opera singer that's here, it doesn't matter if they say, well, what's she doing here? She can't even sing, that was terrible. And it was terrible, truly. But I'm my song. That's why I'm there. I'm presenting my song, the divine song, that I am. That's what divine song is. And that's what our own individual divine song is. And I had mentioned to you that I thought that those who walk with me would probably come forward for a message today, and they're pressing that in now. And so I'm going to share what they have to say. Do you see? They're always so full, it brings tears to my eyes. Dear ones, that at the heart of things, you are a divine song, so complete, so beautiful and unique. You are the song of the fullness as it expresses through you uniquely. You are the song of your birthing into form and your return to home. You are the lullaby of love. You are, in fact, a song so uniquely and only you that it is recognized as you throughout the universe. Your song contains the notes of all your comings and goings here and there throughout all dimensions of time and space. And there is never a time when you are not singing your song in splendor and glory, even when you feel in your current story that you are not at your best. Do you see? You are not your story. You are your song. Your song is one of such beauty and light and color. It is pure delight. And we would have you know that your divine song is always perfect, and it harmonizes fully and importantly with the great song of wholeness from which all life rises. It is perfect as it is, as you are as well. And it is a blessing to your earth and to the life upon it, for that is why you came, to share the splendor of your unique divine song. This is what we would have you know in this moment as we share blessings and greetings today from the heart of love. We love you dearly. That was very beautiful.
Wow.
And I thank them and you.
Indeed, you know, I'm sure all of our hearts are spinning with the beauty of that divine song that your team
because they had told me they were going to be coming through. I had my iPhone ready to record, so I can transcribe that and we can make it available.
Beautiful. I want to, unfortunately, everybody's saying, I look forward to seeing you both in Hawaii. Okay. Thank you, Lisa. We're no questions coming up, just lovely, lovely, lovely celebrations. And thanks to you. I just want to thank you for your delicacy, for your grace, for your wisdom. It's been absolutely wonderful sharing this time with you. I feel replete with an extraordinary energy. So I want to thank you very deeply. And I'm sure everybody will, you know, tune into the recording, which will go up on the Diana, the Voice of Change page in a couple of days' time. And come back to tuning into your wonderful website, which is mahulili.com. So
and I'm on Facebook, which might be an easier place for me to share this. I can post it perhaps tomorrow on my Ma Hulili page on Facebook.
Ma Hulili, yes, which is MAHULILI for those of you who are in doubt. And of course, I wanted to talk also about musings for the spiritually inclined, your wonderful blogs that, you know, tune into. If you have any time now, post our conversation, tune into, and we'll look forward to seeing you again.
It was such a delight. We were just a mutual delight together, weren't we?
We were having fun. We were having fun.
We were having
so
fun.
To everybody, I'm going to close Facebook down right now. You stay where you are, my darling. But thank you, everybody, for being there. And I look forward to sharing with you all of these riches later. And please do write in any questions or comments. Lovely dialogue. Thank you, Laura. Much love to you.
Everybody. Bye.